The red dress was supposed to be her ticket to freedom, until the man who owned the mansion she cleaned put a gun to the head of the woman who sold it to her. Evelyn Carter thought she was walking toward a reunion with her brother. Instead, she was stepping into a trap designed to kill her, and the crime lord she'd been terrified of for 3 years? He might be the only reason she's still breathing. If you love stories where nothing is what it seems and danger wears 1,000 faces, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. But lies. The boutique smelled like expensive leather and lies. Evelyn Carter stood in front of the three-way mirror, barely recognizing herself. The red dress clung to her in ways that felt foreign, like wearing someone else's skin. She'd spent 3 years in gray cotton and sensible shoes, keeping her head down, her voice soft, her existence small. Housemaids didn't wear red. Housemaids didn't draw attention. Housemaids survived by being invisible. But tonight, she wasn't going to be a housemaid. Tonight, she was going to see Thomas, her brother, her only family, the boy who'd held her hand through their mother's funeral, who'd promised he'd come back for her, who'd vanished 10 years ago without a word. And now, after a decade of silence, a single text message had cracked her world open. I'm here. Meet me Thursday, 8 p.m., Fountain Square. I'll explain everything. She'd read it so many times the screen had gone dark from inactivity. You look beautiful, the saleswoman said, her smile sharp and white. Too white. Evelyn had noticed that the first time she'd walked in, how the woman's teeth gleamed like porcelain, how her fingers were always cold when they brushed Evelyn's shoulders, adjusting the fabric. Your brother won't recognize you. Evelyn's throat tightened. I hope he does. Of course he will. The woman's laugh was light, practiced. I just mean, you've grown up. He'll be so proud. The dress cost 2 months' salary. Evelyn had counted every dollar 3 times before handing over the cash, her hands shaking. She'd never owned anything this beautiful, never wanted to. But Thomas deserved to see her as more than the frightened girl he'd left behind. He deserved to see that she'd survived. I'll wrap it for you, the saleswoman said, already turning toward the counter. No. Evelyn's voice came out firmer than she'd intended. I'll wear it out. The woman paused, just for a second, then that smile again. Of course. Let me just... She reached for the tag at the back of Evelyn's neck, her fingers grazing skin. Evelyn felt something small and hard press against her spine, just below the zipper. A pinch. A flutter of panic. What was that? Just the security tag, darling. All gone now. But when Evelyn looked in the mirror, she saw the woman's reflection, saw the way her eyes flicked toward the door, toward the black sedan idling across the street, saw the tension in her jaw. Evelyn's instinct screamed. 3 years of working in Adrian Volkov's estate had taught her to read micro-expressions, to sense danger in the tilt of a head, the pause before a word. She'd learned to survive by paying attention to things other people missed. And right now, every nerve in her body was telling her to run. But she didn't, because Thomas was waiting, because she'd already come this far, because the idea of turning back, of letting fear win again, was worse than whatever her paranoia was inventing. She paid. She left. She walked 4 blocks to the bus stop, her heart hammering against her ribs. The dress felt heavier with every step. The Volkov estate sat on 12 acres of manicured silence, surrounded by iron gates and security cameras that never blinked. Evelyn had been working there for 3 years, since the night a man in an expensive suit had bought her out of a trafficking ring in Budapest and handed her a plane ticket, a work visa, and a single instruction: clean the house, ask no questions, stay alive. She'd never met Adrian Volkov in person. Not really. She'd seen him, tall, dark-haired, moving through the halls like a shadow with a pulse. But he'd never spoken to her, never looked at her. She was part of the furniture, and she'd worked hard to keep it that way. But tonight, as she slipped through the side entrance and headed toward her quarters, she felt it. The weight of eyes on her back. She turned. Adrian Volkov stood at the end of the hallway, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He looked like he always did. Sharp black suit, no tie, dark eyes that gave nothing away. But there was something different tonight, something in the way he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't let her pass. Going somewhere? His voice was low, controlled, not loud, not angry, worse. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her purse. It's my night off. I didn't ask if you had permission. I asked where you're going. Her pulse spiked. In 3 years, he'd never asked her a personal question, never cared. She was a housemaid, a ghost. And now he was looking at her like she mattered, and that terrified her more than anything. I'm meeting my brother. The words came out steady, but her hands were shaking. I haven't seen him in 10 years. He's waiting for me. Adrian's expression didn't change. He took 3 steps forward, and Evelyn's body locked up. He stopped just close enough that she could smell the faint trace of cigarette smoke and expensive cologne. Your brother, he repeated, his voice soft, clinical. Thomas Carter, age 32. Last known location, a shallow grave outside Kyiv, buried 3 months ago with a bullet in his skull. The world tilted. Evelyn's breath caught in her chest, a sharp, strangled sound. You're lying. I'm not. You don't even... How would you... Because I'm the one who killed the man who killed him. Adrian's eyes locked onto hers, and there was something in them now, something cold and final. Your brother's dead, Evelyn. He's been dead since January, and whoever you think you're meeting tonight isn't him. The hallway felt like it was closing in. Evelyn's mind scrambled for logic, for proof, for anything that would make this make sense. But all she could see was Thomas's face, 16 years old, scared, promising her he'd come back. All she could hear was his voice in that text message. I'm here. No. Her voice cracked. No, you're lying. He texted me. Show me. She fumbled for her phone, hands trembling so hard she almost dropped it. She pulled up the message, shoved it toward him like evidence, like salvation. Adrian glanced at it. His jaw tightened. Did you respond? Yes, I told him I'd be there. Did he ask you anything? Details about your life? Things only you would know? Evelyn's stomach dropped. He asked about Mom's locket, the one she gave me before she died. He asked if I still had it. And you told him yes. Of course I did. He's my... Her voice broke. He's my brother. Adrian's hand moved faster than she could process. He grabbed her wrist, not hard, but firm, and pulled her toward him. His other hand went to the back of her neck, fingers pressing just below the collar of the red dress. Evelyn jerked back, panic flooding her veins. What are you... Hold still. His fingers found something, a small, hard object embedded in the fabric. He pulled, and Evelyn felt the faint tug of adhesive separating from her skin. When he held it up, she saw it. A tiny black disc, no bigger than a shirt button. A tracker. Her knees almost gave out. They've been watching you, Adrian said, his voice flat. Every step, every word. They knew you'd buy the dress, knew you'd wear it, knew exactly where you'd be tonight. Evelyn's vision blurred. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Who? People who want me dead. Adrian pocketed the tracker, his expression hard. And they're using you to get to me. That doesn't make sense. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. His voice cut through her spiral like a blade. Not to them. Not anymore. Before she could respond, Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his face. Something dark and dangerous. He looked back at Evelyn, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that looked almost like regret. The boutique where you bought the dress, he said quietly. The woman who sold it to you. What did she look like? Evelyn's mind scrambled. Blonde. Maybe 40. She had a mole on her left cheek, and her hands were cold. I remember because Adrian was already moving. He grabbed her arm and pulled her down the hallway, past the kitchen, past the study, toward the back of the estate where she'd never been allowed. His grip was firm, but not cruel, and she was too shocked to resist. They stopped in front of a steel door. Adrian punched in a code, and it clicked open, revealing a room lined with monitors and filing cabinets. He pulled up a photograph on one of the screens and turned it toward her. Is this her? Evelyn's breath caught. The woman in the photo was blonde, around 40, with a mole on her left cheek. But her eyes were different, vacant, and there was a hole in her forehead. She was found in her apartment 2 days ago, Adrian said, his voice low. Shot execution style. Whoever you met at that boutique wasn't her. Evelyn's legs buckled. Adrian caught her before she hit the floor, lowering her into a chair. She stared at the screen, at the dead woman's face, and felt something inside her shatter. "They killed her," she whispered. "They killed her and someone else took her place." Adrian crouched in front of her, his eyes level with hers. Someone who knew exactly what to say, what to sell you, where to put that tracker. Evelyn's hands were shaking so hard she had to clasp them together. "But why? Why would they?" "Because you matter to me." The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Evelyn stared at him, her mind reeling. What are you talking about? I clean your house. I don't even... You think I let just anyone live here?" Adrian's voice was sharp now, cutting. "You think I don't know who you are? Where you came from? What you cost me? I don't understand." "Your brother saved my life." The words came out flat, emotionless. 3 years ago, a bullet meant for me hit him instead. And before he died, he made me promise one thing: keep you safe. Evelyn's world stopped. "No." The word barely made it past her lips. "No, that's not... Thomas wouldn't... He was working for me." Adrian stood, his expression unreadable. "As an informant, feeding me intel on a trafficking network I was trying to dismantle. He knew the risks. He knew what would happen if they found out. And when they did, he traded his life for yours." Evelyn couldn't breathe, couldn't see. The room was spinning, and all she could hear was the roar of blood in her ears. "You're lying!" Her voice cracked. "You're lying. You have to be..." Adrian pulled out his phone again. He tapped the screen, and a voice filled the room, Thomas's voice. "Her favorite color's blue, like Mom's eyes. She used to collect seashells on the beach near the old house. She has a scar on her right knee from falling off her bike when she was 8, and she..." His voice broke, raw and desperate. "She doesn't know I'm alive. Please, don't tell her. Don't let her see this. Just keep her safe." The recording cut off. Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth, a sob tearing out of her throat. She doubled over, gasping for air, and Adrian didn't move, didn't try to comfort her. He just stood there, watching, waiting. "They tortured him," Evelyn whispered. They made him give them everything, every memory, every detail, so they could build a perfect trap." Adrian's voice was cold, clinical. "And you walked right into it." Evelyn's tears stopped. Something else took over, something sharp and furious and burning. She stood, her legs unsteady, and looked Adrian in the eye. "Then why didn't you stop me sooner?" Her voice was raw, shaking. "Why did you let me buy the dress? Why did you let me think..." "Because I needed to see how deep this went." Adrian's expression didn't change. "I needed to know who was behind it, and now I do." Before Evelyn could respond, the lights went out. The entire estate plunged into darkness. Adrian moved instantly, his hand clamping over Evelyn's mouth before she could scream. He pulled her against the wall, his body a solid wall of muscle and controlled tension. "Don't move," he whispered. "Don't breathe." And then she heard it. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Heavy boots on marble floors. They were inside. Adrian's hand left her mouth, and she heard the faint click of a gun being drawn. He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens. Understand?" Evelyn nodded, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The door exploded inward. Men poured into the room, 4, 5, maybe more, dressed in black tactical gear, weapons raised. Adrian moved like liquid violence, faster than Evelyn's eyes could track. The first man went down with a crushed windpipe. The second took a bullet to the knee and collapsed, screaming. The third lunged at Adrian with a knife, and Adrian caught his wrist, twisted, and drove the blade into the man's own throat. Blood sprayed across the monitors. Evelyn's scream died in her throat. She pressed herself against the wall, frozen, as Adrian tore through the attackers like they were paper. He was efficient, brutal. No wasted movement, no hesitation. And when the last man hit the floor, Adrian turned to her, blood on his hands, his chest heaving. "We need to move. Now." He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the door. They ran through the darkened hallways, and Evelyn could hear more footsteps, more voices, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the estate. Adrian moved like he'd memorized every inch of the house, dragging her through turns and stairwells she didn't recognize. They burst into a library, and Adrian slammed the door shut, locking it. He shoved a heavy bookcase in front of it, then turned to Evelyn. "How many?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "At least 12. Maybe more." "What do they want?" "You." Evelyn's blood turned to ice. "Why?" "Because they think you're leverage." Adrian reloaded his gun, his movements mechanical. "They think if they take you, I'll break." "Will you?" Adrian looked at her, and for the first time she saw something crack in his armor. Something human. Something raw. "Yes." The word hung between them like a confession. Evelyn's breath hitched. "But I'm nobody. I'm just—" "You're his sister." Adrian's voice was low, fierce. "And I made him a promise." Before she could respond, the door shuttered. Someone was ramming it from the other side. Adrian grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the far wall. He pressed a hidden panel, and it slid open, revealing a narrow passageway. "Go." "What about you?" "I'll hold them off." "No." Evelyn's voice came out stronger than she expected. "I'm not leaving you." Adrian's jaw tightened. For a moment he looked like he might argue. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. They ran. The passageway twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the estate's skeleton. Evelyn could hear the muffled sounds of gunfire above them, the crash of furniture, the shouts of men hunting. Adrian's hand never left hers. They emerged in a garage, sleek, modern, filled with cars that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Adrian pulled her toward a black SUV, unlocked it, and shoved her into the passenger seat. "Buckle up!" He started the engine, and the garage door began to rise. But before it opened fully, 3 men appeared in the doorway, guns raised. Adrian didn't hesitate. He floored the gas. The SUV shot forward, and Evelyn screamed as bullets shattered the windshield. Adrian didn't flinch. He drove straight through the men, the impact sickening, and then they were out, speeding down the long driveway toward the gates. The gates were closed. "Hold on." Adrian slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The SUV hit the gates at 60 miles an hour, metal shrieking as they tore through. Evelyn's head snapped back, her seatbelt cutting into her chest. And then they were on the open road, tires screaming as Adrian took the first turn at a speed that defied physics. Evelyn's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She looked at Adrian, at the blood on his shirt, the cuts on his face, the way his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "Somewhere safe." "Where's safe?" Adrian didn't answer. He just kept driving, his eyes locked on the road ahead. And Evelyn realized with a cold, creeping certainty that nowhere was safe anymore. Not for her. Not for him. Not for anyone caught in the gravity of whatever hell they'd just escaped. She looked down at her hand, still trembling, and saw the faint smear of blood on her palm. Not hers. She didn't know whose. And she wasn't sure she wanted to. The safe house wasn't safe. Adrian knew it the moment he pulled into the underground garage and saw the security camera's red light blinking in a pattern it shouldn't. 3 long flashes, 2 short, a code his men used when they'd been compromised. He killed the engine but didn't move. His hand stayed on the gun in his lap, and Evelyn sat frozen beside him, her breathing still uneven from the chaos they'd left behind. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "Stay in the car." "Adrian, I mean it." He turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her throat close. "Lock the doors. If anyone comes down here who isn't me, you drive. Straight through the exit ramp. Don't stop for anything." "I don't know how to—" "You'll figure it out." He pressed the keys into her palm, his fingers cold against her skin. "You're smarter than you think you are." Before she could argue, he was out of the SUV, moving through the shadows like he'd been born in them. Evelyn watched him disappear up the stairwell, her heart slamming against her ribs, and then she was alone. The silence in the garage was suffocating. Every drip of water from a pipe, every distant hum of machinery felt amplified. She counted her breaths, trying to slow them down, trying not to think about the bodies they'd driven through. The blood on Adrian's hands, the sound of her brother's voice begging for her safety in that recording. 3 minutes passed. Then 5. Evelyn's hand hovered over the door lock. Adrian had told her to stay put, but every instinct screamed at her to move, to run, to do something other than sit here waiting to be found. Then she heard it, a single gunshot, muffled but unmistakable, echoing from somewhere above. Her body made the decision before her mind caught up. She unlocked the door, slid out of the SUV, and moved toward the stairwell. The concrete was cold beneath her feet. She'd lost one of her heels somewhere during the escape, and the red dress felt ridiculous now, a costume from someone else's life. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, her ears straining for any sound. The door at the top was cracked open, a sliver of light cutting through the darkness. She pressed her eye to the gap and felt her stomach drop. Adrian stood in the center of a sparsely furnished room, his gun trained on a man tied to a chair. The man's face was swollen, bloodied, barely recognizable as human. And behind Adrian, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, was someone Evelyn had seen before. One of the guards from the estate, a quiet man named Dimitri, who'd always nodded politely when she passed him in the hallways. "I'll ask you one more time," Adrian said, his voice calm in a way that made Evelyn's skin crawl. "Who gave the order?" The man in the chair spat blood onto the floor. "You think I'm scared of you, Volkov? You're already dead. You just don't know it yet." Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Instead, he lowered the gun and turned to Dimitri. "How many are left at the estate?" "2 wounded. The rest are gone." Dimitri's accent was thick, Russian bleeding through his English. "They took what they came for." Evelyn's breath caught. Adrian's expression didn't change, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened. "What did they take?" "Files. From your office, personnel records, financial ledgers, shipment manifests." Dimitri paused, his eyes flicking to the man in the chair. "And the girl's room. They tore it apart." Adrian went very still. "What were they looking for?" "I don't know, but they found something. One of them came out holding a small box. Looked old. Metal, maybe brass." Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. She knew exactly what box they were talking about. Her mother's locket. The one Thomas had asked about in the text message. The one she'd kept hidden in a false bottom of her nightstand drawer. She pushed through the door before she could stop herself. "That's mine." 3 pairs of eyes snapped toward her. Dimitri's hand went to his weapon, but Adrian raised a hand, stopping him. "I told you to stay in the car," Adrian said, his voice flat. "They took my mother's locket." Evelyn's voice shook, but she didn't care. "That's what they were looking for. That's what they wanted." The man in the chair started laughing, a wet, rattling sound. "Oh, this just keeps getting better. She doesn't even know, does she?" Adrian moved faster than Evelyn could track. He grabbed the man by the throat and lifted him, chair and all, slamming him back against the wall. "What are you talking about?" "The locket." The man wheezed, grinning through broken teeth. "You really think her brother gave them details about a piece of jewelry for sentimental reasons? You're not that stupid, Volkov." Evelyn's legs felt weak. "What does that mean?" Adrian let the man drop, the chair legs hitting the floor with a crack. He turned to Evelyn, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Uncertainty. "Your mother," Adrian said slowly. "What did she do for work?" "She was a nurse. She worked at a hospital in... before that." Evelyn's mind scrambled. She'd been so young when her mother died, her memories fractured and incomplete. She didn't talk about it. She just said she used to work for the government. Something clerical, I think." "Clerical?" The man in the chair laughed again. "That's adorable." Adrian pulled out his phone, his fingers moving across the screen with mechanical precision. He pulled up a photograph and held it out to Evelyn. "Is this her?" Evelyn's breath stopped. The woman in the photo was younger, her hair darker, but the eyes were unmistakable. Her mother's eyes. "Where did you get that?" "Interpol database. Classified files." Adrian's voice was tight. "Your mother wasn't a nurse, Evelyn. She was an intelligence operative. MI6. Until she went dark 15 years ago." The room tilted. Evelyn reached for the wall, her fingers scraping against rough concrete. "That's not possible. She was sick. She had cancer. She died when I was 12. She died because someone found her." Adrian's words cut through the haze. "And they killed her before she could talk." "Talk about what?" "A network. Smuggling routes, weapons deals, names of people in positions of power who'd been compromised." Adrian's jaw tightened. Your mother had evidence, proof that could bring down half the corrupt officials in Europe. And before she died, she hid it. Evelyn's hand went to her throat, her fingers searching for a locket that wasn't there anymore. In the locket, not in it. The man in the chair grinned. The locket is the key. Literally, it opens something. A safe deposit box, maybe, or a storage unit. Somewhere your mother stashed enough dirt to bury empires. Adrian turned back to the man, his expression dark. Where are they taking it? To someone who'll pay a lot more than you ever could. The man's smile widened. And when they crack whatever lock that thing opens, you're finished. All of you. Adrian raised his gun. Wait. Evelyn's voice cracked. Don't. Adrian didn't lower the weapon. He's not going to tell us anything useful. Then let him go. Let him... Adrian turned to her, and she saw something flash across his face. Anger, maybe, or disbelief. You have no idea what you're saying. I know you don't want to kill him in front of me. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Dmitri shifted his weight, his hand still resting on his holster. The man in the chair watched them both with blood-streaked amusement. Adrian lowered the gun. Dmitri, take him to the East warehouse. Make sure he doesn't leave in one piece. Wait, you said... Evelyn started. I said I wouldn't kill him in front of you. Adrian's voice was cold. I didn't say I'd let him walk. Dmitri moved forward, cutting the man's restraints and hauling him to his feet. The man stumbled, his legs barely holding him, and as Dmitri dragged him past Evelyn, he leaned close enough that she could smell the copper tang of blood on his breath. Your brother screamed your name when they put the bullet in his head, he whispered. Just thought you should know. Evelyn's hand moved before she could think. The slap echoed through the room, sharp and final, and the man's head snapped to the side. He laughed, actually laughed, as Dmitri shoved him toward the door. She's got her mother's fire, the man called over his shoulder. Shame it won't save her. The door slammed shut. Evelyn stood there, her hand still raised, her palm stinging, and felt something crack inside her chest. Not grief, not fear, something harder, something angrier. Adrian was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. You should have stayed in the car, he said quietly. You keep saying that. Evelyn's voice came out steadier than she felt. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving until you tell me everything. Everything. Adrian's laugh was bitter. You don't want everything, Evelyn. Trust me. Stop deciding what I want. She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the concrete. You've been making decisions for me for 3 years. Where I sleep, what I clean, who I talk to. You bought me out of a trafficking ring, gave me a job, kept me safe, and you never once asked me if that's what I wanted. You want to go back? Adrian's voice was sharp. You want me to drop you on a street corner in Budapest and see how long you last? I want the truth. Evelyn's hands were shaking, but she didn't look away. My brother's dead. My mother was a spy. And you've been lying to me since the day we met. So either tell me what's really going on, or let me walk out that door right now. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he holstered his gun and walked to the small kitchenette in the corner of the room. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, drank one in a single swallow, and refilled it before bringing the second glass to Evelyn. Drink. I don't. Drink it. She took the glass, her fingers wrapping around the cold crystal, and took a sip. The whiskey burned going down, sharp and cleansing, and she coughed. Adrian sat on the edge of the table, his posture deceptively relaxed. Your mother didn't just hide evidence. She hid the only copy. The original files were destroyed in a fire, officially ruled an accident, but we both know better. She kept a backup, encrypted, secured, locked away somewhere even MI6 couldn't find. Why didn't she tell anyone? Why didn't she? Because she didn't know who to trust. Adrian's voice was flat. The network she was investigating had people everywhere. Police, intelligence agencies, government officials. She was one woman against an empire, and they were closing in. So she went dark, changed her name, moved to a small town, and tried to disappear. But they found her. They always find you. Adrian's eyes were distant, fixed on something Evelyn couldn't see. She knew that. That's why she made contingency plans. She told your brother where the locket was, told him what it opened, made him promise that if anything happened to her, he'd get it to the right people. Evelyn's throat tightened. But he didn't. He was 16, scared, and after your mother died, he had you to take care of. Adrian's jaw tightened. He buried the locket and tried to forget it existed. But 10 years later, someone started asking questions. Someone who knew your mother's real identity. Someone who wanted what she'd hidden. And they came after Thomas. They offered him money at first, a lot of it. Enough to buy you a real life, get you out of the system, set you up somewhere safe. Adrian's voice dropped. But Thomas knew the moment he gave them that locket, they'd kill him. So he came to me. Evelyn's hands tightened around the glass. Why you? Because I had a reputation for protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. And because your mother and I crossed paths once, a long time ago. She saved my life. I owed her. The weight of that confession settled over the room like a shroud. Evelyn took another sip of whiskey, trying to process the pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was part of. So you made a deal with Thomas, she said slowly. He'd work for you, give you information, and you'd keep me safe. Something like that. And when they found out he was working for you, they made an example of him. Adrian's voice was cold, clinical. They tortured him for 3 days, made him give up every detail about you, about the locket, about where it was hidden, and then they put a bullet in his head and dumped his body where no one would find it. Evelyn set the glass down before she dropped it. Her hands were shaking too hard to hold anything. But you found it. I find everything eventually. And you didn't tell me. What was I supposed to say? Adrian's voice rose for the first time, raw and sharp. Your brother's dead. He died because of me. Because I asked him to risk his life for information that got him killed. And the only reason you're still breathing is because I kept my mouth shut and let you believe he'd abandoned you. The words hung in the air like a slap. Evelyn felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You should have told me. I should have done a lot of things. Adrian stood, his movements tight and controlled. But I made a choice. I kept you alive. I gave you a life where you didn't have to look over your shoulder every second. And if that makes me a liar, then fine. I'm a liar. You're a coward. Adrian's head snapped toward her, his eyes dark and dangerous. What did you say? You heard me. Evelyn's voice didn't waver. You're a coward. You couldn't face me because you were too busy carrying guilt that isn't even yours to carry. Thomas made his choice. He knew the risks, and you don't get to take that away from him by pretending you're the villain. Adrian's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath the skin. For a moment, Evelyn thought he might yell, might tell her to get out, might do something to shatter the fragile thread holding them in the same room. Instead, he laughed, a short, bitter sound that didn't reach his eyes. You don't know anything about guilt. I know you've been punishing yourself for 3 years. Evelyn stepped closer, close enough to see the faint scar on his cheekbone, the shadows under his eyes. I know you watch me when you think I'm not looking. I know you check the locks on my door every night. I know you pay for things I don't even ask for, new clothes, doctor visits, books I mentioned once in passing. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. A crack in the armor. That's not guilt, he said quietly. That's obligation. No. Evelyn's voice was soft but firm. That's grief. You're grieving for my brother, and you don't know how to stop. The silence that followed was different, heavier. Adrian looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, really seeing her, and Evelyn felt the weight of it settle in her chest. He asked me to keep you safe, Adrian said finally. That's all he wanted. He didn't ask me to tell you the truth. He didn't ask me to make you understand. He just asked me to make sure you had a chance at a normal life. There's nothing normal about this. Evelyn gestured at the room, at the blood still drying on Adrian's shirt, at the world outside that wanted her dead for something her mother had hidden decades ago. And there never will be. So stop pretending you can give me something you don't have. Adrian's hand moved just slightly, like he wanted to reach for her but couldn't let himself. What do you want from me, Evelyn? I want you to treat me like a person. Her voice cracked just a little. Not a promise. Not a debt. Not something you have to protect because you owe my brother. I want you to see me. I see you. No, you don't. Evelyn shook her head. You see a scared girl who needs saving. But I stopped being that girl the moment you told me Thomas was dead. So either start seeing who I actually am, or let me go. Adrian stared at her, his expression unreadable, and for a long moment neither of them moved. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and every ounce of tension that had started to ease snapped back into place. "We need to move." "What?" "They found us." Adrian grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. "Dimitri just sent a distress signal. They're hitting the East Warehouse." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "How many?" "Enough." Adrian's grip tightened. "And if they're willing to burn through one of my locations this fast, it means they're not playing the long game anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means they have the locket, and they're cleaning up loose ends." They ran. Through corridors that smelled like oil and rust, down stairwells that spiraled into darkness, out into an alley where the night air hit Evelyn's skin like ice. Adrian's hand never left hers, pulling her forward even when her legs screamed for rest. They reached another car, older, nondescript, the kind that blended into traffic without a second glance. Adrian shoved her into the passenger seat and peeled out of the alley before she'd even closed the door. "Where are we going?" Evelyn gasped. "Somewhere they won't think to look." "And where's that?" Adrian didn't answer. He just drove, weaving through side streets and alleys, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. Evelyn watched the city blur past, neon signs and darkened windows, people living lives that didn't involve running for survival. After 20 minutes, Adrian pulled into the underground parking garage of a high-rise apartment building. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, his hand still gripping the wheel. "This is my place," he said quietly. "No one knows about it. Not Dimitri, not my men, no one." Evelyn looked at him, surprised. "You trust me with that?" "I don't have a choice." They took the elevator to the top floor, and Adrian unlocked a door that opened into a space so different from the estate that Evelyn almost didn't believe it belonged to the same person. The apartment was small, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. No luxury, no excess, just clean lines and empty space. "You can sleep in the bedroom," Adrian said, already moving toward the kitchen. "I'll take the couch." "Adrian, we'll figure out the next move in the morning. Right now you need rest." "I don't need You're shaking." His voice was quiet, but firm. "You've been shaking since we left the estate. So go. Sleep. We'll deal with the rest later." Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, plans, something that felt like control, but her body betrayed her, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. She nodded, moving toward the bedroom on legs that barely held her. She collapsed onto the bed without bothering to take off the ruined red dress. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was the faint outline of Adrian's silhouette against the window, a man standing guard over something he couldn't save. And in the space between waking and dreaming, she heard Thomas's voice one more time, not from a recording, but from memory. "I'll come back for you. I promise." But he hadn't. He never could. And Evelyn finally let herself cry. Evelyn woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of low voices arguing in Russian. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The bed was too soft, the sheets too clean, and the light filtering through the curtains was wrong. Too bright, too early. Then it all came rushing back. The estate, the gunfire, the truth about Thomas, the locket her mother had used to hide secrets that were worth killing for. She sat up slowly, her body aching in places she didn't know could hurt. The red dress was wrinkled beyond recognition, and there was a dark stain near the hem that she didn't want to think about. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood, her bare feet finding the cold hardwood floor. The voices in the other room grew louder. One was Adrian's, clipped, controlled, dangerous. The other was unfamiliar, rougher, with an accent that turned every syllable into gravel. Evelyn moved to the door and pressed her ear against it. "Don't care what he promised you," the unfamiliar voice was saying. "The girl's a liability. You should have cut her loose the moment they came for her." "She's not going anywhere." Adrian's voice was flat, final. "Then you're a fool. They'll use her to get to you, and you know it." "Let them try." A pause, then a bitter laugh. "You're already too deep in this. She's not worth dying for." "That's not your call to make." "It will be when they put a bullet in your head and ask me to clean up the mess." Evelyn's hand tightened on the doorknob. She pushed it open before she could second-guess herself, and both men turned to look at her. Adrian stood near the windows, his posture rigid, arms crossed. The other man was older, maybe 50, with scars that told stories Evelyn didn't want to hear. He looked her up and down with an expression that made her skin crawl. "So this is her." the man said, switching to English. The girl who's got Volkov so twisted up he's forgetting how to think straight. Get out, Victor. Adrian's voice was cold. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Victor's eyes stayed on Evelyn. She's pretty enough, I'll give you that. But pretty doesn't stop bullets. Evelyn stepped further into the room, refusing to look away. I can hear you, you know. Victor's eyebrows rose. She's got a mouth on her, too. That's going to get her killed faster. I said, get out. Adrian moved between them, his body a wall. Now. Victor raised his hands in mock surrender. Fine, but when this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you. He headed for the door, then paused, glancing back at Evelyn. Your mother was a tough woman, smart. Let's hope you inherited something useful from her. The door slammed shut behind him. Evelyn stood in the sudden silence, her heart pounding. Adrian didn't turn around immediately. He stayed facing the window, his shoulders tight, and when he finally spoke, his voice was careful. How much did you hear? Enough. Evelyn crossed her arms, trying to ignore how exposed she felt in the ruined dress. Who was that? Someone who used to be a friend. Used to be? People change. Adrian turned and she saw the exhaustion etched into his face. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. There's coffee in the kitchen, and I had some clothes delivered. They're in the bathroom. Evelyn blinked. You had clothes delivered? When? An hour ago. You've been up since... I don't sleep much. Adrian moved past her toward the kitchen, effectively ending the conversation. Evelyn followed him, her curiosity stronger than her self-preservation. The kitchen was as minimalist as the rest of the apartment. White counters, steel appliances, nothing personal anywhere. Adrian poured her a cup of coffee without asking, black, and set it on the counter. We need to talk about what happens next, he said. You mean about the locket? Among other things. Adrian leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. The people who have it aren't going to stop. They'll crack whatever lock it opens, and when they do, they'll have leverage over some very powerful people. People who won't hesitate to burn the city to the ground to keep their secrets buried. Evelyn wrapped her hands around the warm mug. So what do? We get it back. Just like that? No, not just like that. Adrian's jaw tightened. They'll be expecting us to come for it. They'll have it locked down somewhere secure with enough firepower to level a city block. Walking in there is suicide. Then we don't walk. Evelyn met his eyes. We find another way. Adrian studied her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. You understand what you're saying, right? This isn't about survival anymore. This is about going on the offensive. And people die when I go on the offensive. People are already dying. Evelyn's voice was steady. Thomas died. That woman at the boutique died. How many more before we stop running? Running keeps you alive. I don't want to just be alive. The words came out fiercer than she'd intended. I want them to pay for what they did. To my brother. To my mother. To everyone they've hurt. Adrian's expression shifted, something dark and approving settling into his features. You're angrier than I thought. You don't know me as well as you think you do. Maybe not. Adrian pushed off the counter, closing the distance between them. But I know what anger does to people. I know how it burns through everything else until there's nothing left but ash and regret. And I won't let that happen to you. You don't get to decide that. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. Evelyn set the mug down hard enough that coffee sloshed over the rim. I need the truth. All of it. What was my mother hiding? What's in those files that's worth all of this? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it out to her. Your mother spent 6 years tracking a network called the Covenant. It's not an organization in any official sense. No headquarters. No public face. Just a collection of people in positions of power who use that power to move money, weapons, and people across borders without accountability. Evelyn stared at the screen, at names and faces she didn't recognize. Politicians, business executives, military officials. How many? At least 40 confirmed members. Probably more. Adrian's voice was grim. Your mother compiled evidence linking them to everything from arms deals to human trafficking. She had bank records, recorded conversations, digital trails that couldn't be erased, and she was going to blow it wide open. But they killed her first. They tried. But she'd already hidden the evidence somewhere they couldn't find it. The locket is the key to that location. Without it, they can't destroy what she left behind. And without destroying it, they're vulnerable. Evelyn's mind raced. So they've been looking for it this whole time, for 15 years. More or less. They thought it died with her. Then Thomas got desperate, started asking questions, and they realized she'd passed it on. Adrian's expression darkened. By the time I found out what he was caught up in, it was too late to pull him out. But you tried. I tried. The admission sounded like it cost him something. I offered him money, protection, a way out. He refused. Said he'd made a promise to your mother, and he wasn't going to break it just because things got dangerous. Evelyn's throat tightened. That sounded exactly like Thomas. Stubborn, loyal to a fault, too brave for his own good. So they tortured him until he told them where the locket was, she said quietly. Not exactly. Adrian's jaw tightened. He gave them false information, sent them on a chase across 3 countries while I moved you out of Budapest and into the estate. By the time they realized he'd lied, he was already dead. The weight of that settled over Evelyn like a physical thing. Her brother had died protecting her, buying time for Adrian to get her somewhere safe, and she'd spent 3 years thinking he'd abandoned her. I hate you, she whispered. Adrian didn't flinch. I know. You should have told me. I should have done a lot of things. Adrian took the phone back, his fingers tight around it. But I made a choice, and I'd make it again. Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the cold exterior to the man underneath, someone who carried guilt like armor, who made impossible decisions and lived with the consequences, who'd spent 3 years keeping a promise to a dead man because it was the only honorable thing left in his world. What happened to Dmitri? She asked, changing the subject before the emotion in her chest could spill over. Adrian's expression went blank. He's dead. What? They hit the warehouse hard. He didn't make it out. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. Dmitri had been quiet, polite, one of the few people at the estate who'd treated her like she was more than furniture. How many others? Enough? Adrian's voice was flat. Victor lost 3 men. I lost 5. And we still don't have the locket. So what do we do now? We regroup. I have contacts who owe me favors. People who can track where the locket's been taken, who's holding it, what their security looks like. Adrian moved toward the windows, his silhouette framed against the city skyline. But it's going to take time. And time is something we don't have a lot of. Why not? Because the Covenant knows I'm involved now. And they know I won't stop until I get that locket back. He turned to face her. Which means they'll come after me with everything they have. And when they do, anyone standing next to me becomes a target. Evelyn's hands curled into fists. Then we hit them first. We? You said you needed to regroup, to plan. Fine. Use me. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Use you how? They think I'm just some scared girl who doesn't know anything. Let them keep thinking that. Evelyn's mind was already racing, pieces clicking into place. What if I reached out? Told them I want to make a deal? Absolutely not. Listen to me. No. Adrian crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. You're not bait. I won't allow it. You don't get to allow or disallow anything. Evelyn stood her ground, even as her heart hammered. This is my life, my family, my choice. Your choice will get you killed. Then at least I'll die doing something instead of hiding. The words came out raw, angry. I'm so tired of being hidden, Adrian, of being protected and sheltered and kept in the dark like I'm fragile. I'm not fragile. I'm angry. And I want to hurt them as much as they've hurt me. Adrian stared at her, something warring behind his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. You have no idea what you're asking for. Then show me. The silence stretched between them, taut and dangerous. Then Adrian pulled out his phone again and made a call. I need everything you have on Covenant safe houses in the city, he said without preamble, and I need it in the next 2 hours. A pause. I don't care if it's incomplete. Send what you have. He hung up and looked at Evelyn. If we're doing this, we're doing it my way. You follow my lead. You don't improvise. You don't take risks I haven't cleared. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Evelyn nodded, her pulse racing. Good. Now go change. We have work to do. She turned toward the bathroom, then paused. Adrian? What? Thank you. For not treating me like I'm made of glass. His expression softened just barely. You're a lot of things, Evelyn, but fragile isn't one of them. The clothes Adrian had delivered fit better than they should have. Dark jeans, a black sweater, boots that laced up to her knees. Evelyn caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized herself. The housemaid was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, someone who looked like they could walk into danger and walk back out. She found Adrian in the living room, surrounded by papers and photographs spread across the coffee table. He glanced up when she entered, and something flickered in his eyes before he looked away. They're holding the locket at a private estate about 40 minutes outside the city, he said, tapping one of the photos. Belongs to a man named Konstantin Fedorov. He's old covenant, been with them since the beginning. If anyone's going to crack what the locket opens, it'll be him. Evelyn studied the photograph. The estate was massive, sprawling grounds surrounded by high walls and security gates. How do we get in? We don't, not directly. Adrian pulled up another photo, this one of a woman in an elegant dress, mid-30s, dark hair swept into a chignon. Fedorov's hosting a charity gala tomorrow night. Black tie, invitation only. Security tight, but not impossible to bypass. You want to walk into a party full of people who want us dead? I want to walk into a party where everyone's distracted and half drunk, where security is focused on the guests, not the perimeter. Adrian's smile was cold. And I want you to be my date. Evelyn's eyebrows rose. Your date? Fedorov collects things, art, wine, information, women. If you walk in on my arm, he'll assume you're just another pretty distraction. He won't see you as a threat. And while he's not seeing me as a threat, you'll plant a device in his study that'll give us remote access to his security system. Then we'll know exactly where he's keeping the locket and how to get to it. Evelyn's stomach tightened. You make it sound simple. It's not. Adrian's expression was serious. There are a dozen ways this could go wrong, but it's the best shot we have. She looked at the photo of Fedorov's estate again, at the walls and cameras and armed guards. Everything in her screamed that this was insane, that they were going to get caught, that she was in way over her head. But then she thought of Thomas, of the recording of him begging for her safety, of the way he'd lied to protect her even as they tortured him. She thought of her mother, dying to keep secrets that could save lives, hiding evidence that could bring down monsters. And she thought of the fear she'd carried for 3 years, the small, quiet life she'd built inside Adrian's estate, always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'll do it, she said. Adrian studied her face. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Then we start training now. You need to know how to move through a room without drawing attention, how to read exits, how to spot security, how to lie without flinching. I know how to lie. Not like this, you don't. Adrian stood, closing the distance between them. This isn't lying to stay safe. This is lying to survive. And there's a difference. He spent the next 6 hours drilling her. How to walk in heels without stumbling. How to hold a champagne glass like she belonged at a party full of millionaires. How to make small talk without revealing anything real. How to plan a device the size of a quarter in under 3 seconds. Evelyn's head spun with information, her body aching from practicing the same movements over and over. But she didn't complain, didn't ask for a break. She pushed through the exhaustion, the fear, the voice in her head screaming that she was going to get them both killed. When Adrian finally called a halt, the sun was setting outside the windows, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson. You're better than I expected, he said, and it sounded like the closest thing to a compliment he was capable of. Evelyn collapsed onto the couch, her legs screaming. I feel like I just ran a marathon. You'll feel worse tomorrow. Adrian handed her a bottle of water. But you'll be ready. She drank deeply, then looked up at him. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's because you owe Thomas. There's more to it than that. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Your mother saved my life once, he said quietly. I was younger, stupider, caught in a deal that went bad. She was working undercover, posing as a buyer. When the shooting started, she could have run, should have run, but she stayed, pulled me out of the line of fire and got me to a hospital. Evelyn's breath caught. I didn't know. No one did? She made me promise not to tell anyone, said it would blow her cover. Adrian's jaw tightened. I never saw her again, but I spent years trying to repay that debt. And when Thomas came to me, told me who he was, what he needed, it felt like fate. Or a trap. Maybe both. Adrian's smile was bitter. But I made him a promise. And I keep my promises. Evelyn looked at him, at the scars on his knuckles, the shadows under his eyes, the weight he carried in every line of his body. You're a better man than you think you are. Don't make that mistake. His voice was hard. I've done things that would keep you up at night, hurt people, killed people, built an empire on blood and fear. Your mother saved me, but she didn't redeem me. No one can do that. I'm not trying to redeem you. Evelyn's voice was soft. I'm just saying, maybe you're not as lost as you think. Adrian looked at her, and for a moment the walls came down. She saw the man underneath, broken, grieving, trying to do one good thing in a life full of bad ones. Then his phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. He pulled it out, read the message, and his expression went cold. What is it? Evelyn asked. Victor just confirmed it. The gala's tomorrow at 8. We have less than 24 hours to prepare. Evelyn's stomach dropped. That's not a lot of time. No. Adrian stood, his movements sharp and controlled. But it's all we have, so we make it work. He offered her his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Evelyn took it. His grip was warm, steady, and when he pulled her to her feet, she felt something shift between them, some unspoken understanding that they were in this together now, for better or worse. Get some rest, Adrian said. Tomorrow's going to be the longest day of your life. Evelyn nodded, heading back toward the bedroom. But as she reached the door, she paused and looked back at him. Adrian? Yeah? If this goes wrong, if something happens to me, it won't. But if it does, it won't. His voice was firm, final. I won't let it. Evelyn wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he could keep her safe the way he'd kept her safe for 3 years. But she'd learned the hard way that safety was an illusion, and promises were just words people used to make themselves feel better. So she nodded, went into the bedroom, and closed the door. And for the second night in a row, she fell asleep wondering if she'd wake up to see the sunrise. The dress arrived at noon in a garment bag that cost more than Evelyn had earned in 6 months of cleaning Adrian's estate. She unzipped it slowly, almost afraid to look, and felt her breath catch when she saw the fabric. Deep emerald green, silk that moved like water, cut in a way that would make her look like she belonged in a world of champagne and secrets. It was nothing like the red dress. This one was armor disguised as elegance. Adrian knocked once before entering, already dressed in a black tuxedo that made him look dangerous and untouchable. He stopped when he saw her holding the dress, something unreadable flickering across his face. It'll fit, he said. How do you know my size? I pay attention. Evelyn felt heat crawl up her neck. She'd spent 3 years being invisible, and now he was telling her he'd noticed things she hadn't realized anyone could see. There's a woman coming at 2 to do your hair and makeup, Adrian continued, his tone businesslike. Her name is Irina. She's worked for me before. You can trust her. Can I? More than you can trust most people. Adrian moved to the window, his hands in his pockets. She'll make you look like you belong at Fedorov's table, like you're someone worth noticing. I thought the point was not to be noticed. The point is to be noticed in the right way. He turned to face her. Beautiful but unthreatening. Expensive but not ostentatious. The kind of woman men underestimate. Evelyn set the dress down carefully. And what happens when Fedorov realizes I'm not just some arm candy you picked up? He won't. Not if you do exactly what we practiced. Adrian's expression was hard. You walk in, you smile, you let me do the talking. When I give you the signal, you excuse yourself to powder your nose. You'll have 4 minutes to get to his study, plant the device, and get back to the ballroom. 4 minutes. 4, not 5. Security does sweeps every 6 minutes. You need to be gone before they circle back. Evelyn's stomach tightened. And if I'm not? Then we improvise. Adrian's jaw set. But we won't have to, because you're going to do this exactly right. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like pressure building in her chest, threatening to crack her ribs. Irina arrived precisely at 2, a small woman with silver hair and hands that moved like a surgeon's. She didn't ask questions, didn't make small talk, just sat Evelyn down and went to work transforming her into someone else. Adrian watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. Evelyn caught his eyes in the mirror once, and something passed between them, a recognition of what they were about to do, of the line they were about to cross. When Irina finally stepped back, Evelyn barely recognized herself. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, her face sculpted with makeup that highlighted bones she didn't know she had. She looked older, harder, like someone who'd learned to survive in a world that ate people alive. "Good," Irina said simply. Then she packed her things and left without another word. Evelyn stood, smoothing down the dress that fit like it had been made for her body. Adrian crossed the room slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You look—" He stopped, seeming to search for the right word. "Convincing." That's not exactly a compliment. It's better than a compliment. It's survival. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. "This is the device. It's magnetic, waterproof, and nearly undetectable once it's in place. Fedorov's study has a ventilation grate behind his desk. You'll plant it there." Evelyn took the box, feeling its weight in her palm. "And if someone walks in while I'm doing it, tell them you got lost looking for the bathroom. Act embarrassed. They'll escort you out and forget about you in 5 minutes. You make it sound easy." "It's not." Adrian's hand moved to her shoulder, his touch firm. "But you can do this. I know you can." Evelyn looked up at him, at the man who'd lied to her for 3 years, who'd kept her brother's death a secret, who was now asking her to walk into a den of killers and smile while doing it. She should hate him. Part of her did. But another part, the part that had listened to Thomas's voice begging for her safety, understood why he'd done it. "I'm terrified," she admitted quietly. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." Adrian's thumb brushed against her collarbone, just once, before he pulled away. "But don't let it control you. You're stronger than you think." A car arrived at 7. Not the SUV from 2 nights ago, but a sleek black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who didn't make eye contact. Adrian helped Evelyn into the back seat, his hand warm against hers, and they drove in silence through the city as dusk bled into night. Evelyn watched the buildings blur past, her mind racing through everything they'd practiced. 4 minutes. Plant the device. Get out. Don't get caught. Don't panic. Don't die. "Evelyn." She turned to find Adrian watching her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "Whatever happens tonight," he said quietly, "you need to know something." "What?" "Your brother would be proud of you." The words hit her like a physical blow. Evelyn felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. Crying would ruin Irina's work, and more importantly, it would crack the armor she'd spent the day building. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't do that to me right now." "I'm sorry." And he sounded like he meant it. "But it's true. He'd see what you're doing, and he'd be proud." Evelyn turned back to the window, her jaw tight. "He'd tell me I'm an idiot for walking into a trap." "Probably." Adrian's voice held the ghost of a smile. "But he'd walk in there with you anyway." Fedorov's estate looked like something out of a magazine, all modern glass and stone, lit up against the night sky like a jewel. Cars lined the circular driveway, luxury brands Evelyn only recognized from movies. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns that cost more than her entire life stepped out, laughing, drinking champagne before they'd even made it inside. Adrian took her hand as they approached the entrance, his grip steady and possessive in a way that made her feel both protected and trapped. "Remember," he murmured as they reached the doors, "you're mine tonight. Act like it." Evelyn's pulse spiked, but she nodded. The role was simple. Be beautiful, be quiet, be forgettable. The ballroom was massive, dripping with crystal chandeliers and filled with people who moved through wealth like it was oxygen. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than Evelyn used to make in a day. A string quartet played something classical in the corner, the music swallowed by conversation and laughter. Adrian kept her close, his hand on the small of her back as they navigated the crowd. People nodded to him, some with respect, others with thinly veiled fear. No one asked who Evelyn was. They just looked at her the way men looked at expensive things, appreciative but ultimately uninterested in anything beyond surface beauty. Volkov. The voice came from behind them, smooth and cold. Adrian turned and Evelyn felt his body tense in a way that set every nerve on edge. Konstantin Fedorov was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He wore his tuxedo like a uniform, and when he smiled, it didn't reach those eyes. "I didn't expect to see you here," Fedorov said in lightly accented English, "given recent events." "I wouldn't miss your party, Konstantin." Adrian's voice was smooth, unbothered. "You throw the best ones in the city." "Flattery." Fedorov's gaze slid to Evelyn, assessing. "And who is this lovely creature?" "A friend." Adrian's hand tightened on Evelyn's waist. "She's shy, doesn't like crowds." "Then why bring her?" Fedorov's smile sharpened. "Unless you wanted to show her off." "Something like that." Fedorov stepped closer, and Evelyn had to force herself not to step back. He smelled like expensive cologne and something underneath it, something chemical and wrong. "You have exquisite taste, Volkov," Fedorov said, still looking at Evelyn. "Tell me, does she speak?" "When she has something worth saying." Adrian's tone held a warning. Fedorov laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Of course. Well, enjoy the party. We'll talk later about that business matter you mentioned." He walked away, and Evelyn finally allowed herself to breathe. "That was him," she whispered. "That was him." Adrian's voice was tight. "And he suspects something." "How do you know?" "Because I know Konstantin. He doesn't make small talk unless he's testing you." Adrian steered her toward the edge of the room, away from the thickest part of the crowd. "We need to move up the timeline. You go now." Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. "Now? But you said—" "I know what I said. But Fedorov's watching us, and if we wait, he'll have someone follow you." Adrian's eyes scanned the room. "The study is on the second floor, east wing, third door on the left. Can you find it?" "I think so." "Don't think. No." His hand came up to cup her face, the gesture intimate enough that anyone watching would think he was being affectionate. But his eyes were hard, urgent. 4 minutes, Evelyn. In and out. Understand?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Adrian leaned in, and for a split second, Evelyn thought he was going to kiss her. Instead, his lips brushed her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "If anything goes wrong, you run. You don't wait for me. You don't try to be brave. You just run." Then he pulled back, smiled like he'd just whispered something charming, and turned to intercept a man in a gray suit who was heading their direction. Evelyn moved through the crowd, her legs shaking beneath the silk dress. She kept her head down, her expression neutral, just another guest looking for the restroom. The staircase was wide and curved, and she climbed it slowly, counting her breaths. The second floor was quieter, the sounds of the party muffled by thick carpet and closed doors. Evelyn moved down the east wing, her heels silent, and stopped at the third door on the left. It was unlocked. She slipped inside and closed it behind her, her pulse roaring in her ears. The study was dark except for the moonlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Fedorov's desk sat in the center of the room, massive and imposing, and behind it, just like Adrian had said, was a ventilation grate. Evelyn crossed to it, pulled the device from the small clutch she'd been carrying, and reached up. The grate was higher than she'd expected, and she had to stand on her toes to— The door opened. Evelyn spun around, her heart stopping. A woman stood in the doorway, younger than Evelyn, dressed in a server's uniform. She looked just as startled. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said quickly, defaulting to the script Adrian had drilled into her. "I was looking for the bathroom and got turned around." The woman's eyes narrowed. "The bathrooms are downstairs." "I know. I got lost." Evelyn forced a laugh that sounded too high, too nervous. "These old estates, they all look the same after a few glasses of champagne." The woman didn't smile. She stepped into the room and Evelyn saw her hand move to something clipped to her belt. Not a phone, a radio. "You should come with me," the woman said. "Of course. I'm so embarrassed." Evelyn moved toward the door, her mind racing. She had the device in her hand hidden against her palm, but she hadn't planted it yet. If she left now, the whole mission was blown. She made a decision. As she passed the woman, Evelyn stumbled, her heel catching on the carpet. The woman reached out instinctively to steady her, and in that split second of contact, Evelyn pressed the device into the woman's pocket. It wasn't the ventilation grate, it wasn't the plan, but it was something. "Thank you," Evelyn gasped, straightening. "I'm such a mess tonight." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Just be more careful. Mr. Fedorov doesn't like guests wandering." "I will, I promise." The woman escorted her back downstairs, and Evelyn spotted Adrian across the ballroom. His eyes found hers, a question in them, and she gave the smallest nod. The woman disappeared back into the crowd, and Adrian was at Evelyn's side in seconds. "Did you—" "Not where we planned," Evelyn whispered. "But it's placed on one of the servers." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That's not ideal." "It was that or get caught." He studied her face, then nodded once. "Good instincts. We'll make it work." They stayed another hour, playing the role of guests, drinking champagne they didn't taste, making conversation that meant nothing. Evelyn's skin crawled every time someone looked at her, convinced they could see through the mask, see the terrified girl underneath. Finally, mercifully, Adrian said it was time to leave. They were halfway to the exit when Fedorov appeared again, blocking their path. "Leaving so soon?" His smile was sharp. "We haven't had that conversation yet, Volkov. It's late. My friend is tired." Adrian's voice was smooth, but Evelyn felt the tension in his body. "Of course, but perhaps you could spare a moment? Alone?" Fedorov's eyes slid to Evelyn. "Your lovely companion can wait in the lounge." Adrian's hand tightened on Evelyn's waist. "I'd prefer to keep her with me." "I'm sure you would." Fedorov's tone hardened. "But I insist." The air between them crackled with unspoken threats. Evelyn felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong word away from falling. Then Adrian smiled, cold and controlled. "Fine. 5 minutes." He turned to Evelyn, his expression unreadable. "Wait for me by the car. Don't talk to anyone." Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to stay, but she saw the warning in his eyes and nodded. She walked out of the ballroom, through the grand foyer, and out into the cool night air. The driver was waiting by the sedan, and Evelyn stood beside it, her arms wrapped around herself, counting the seconds. 1 minute, 2, 3. At 4 minutes, gunshots shattered the night. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. The shots came from inside the estate, sharp, rapid cracks that sent guests screaming out the front doors. People ran in all directions, panic spreading like wildfire. Evelyn's body locked up. Adrian had told her to wait by the car, told her not to move. But those gunshots... Another volley, closer this time. And then the front doors exploded outward. Adrian stumbled out, his tuxedo jacket torn, blood streaking down his temple. He had Fedorov by the collar, dragging the older man like a rag doll, and behind them, armed men poured out of the estate. "Drive!" Adrian roared at the driver. "Now!" The driver threw open the back door, and Adrian shoved Fedorov inside before diving in after him. Evelyn scrambled into the front seat, and the car peeled out before she'd even closed the door. Bullets shattered the rear window. Evelyn screamed, ducking low, and the driver took a corner so fast the tires screamed. Behind them, black SUVs gave chase, their headlights cutting through the darkness. "What the hell happened?" Evelyn gasped. "Change of plans." Adrian had his gun pressed against Fedorov's temple, his expression murderous. "Our friend here decided to get creative." Fedorov laughed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "You think you've won something, Volkov? You've just signed your death warrant." "I'll take my chances." Adrian pulled out his phone with his free hand and made a call. "Victor, I need extraction at the North Bridge in 3 minutes, and bring everyone." He hung up and looked at Evelyn. "You okay?" "Define okay." Her voice shook. "Not dead." "Then yeah, I'm fantastic." Adrian's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "That's my girl." The car swerved again, narrowly avoiding a collision. Evelyn looked back and saw 4 SUVs now, their occupants leaning out windows with weapons drawn. "They're gaining," the driver said, his voice tight. "I can see that." Adrian's grip tightened on Fedorov. "Where's the locket?" "Go to hell." Adrian slammed the gun into Fedorov's ribs, and the man gasped. "Where is it? You'll never find it," Fedorov wheezed. "I've already moved it. By tomorrow, it'll be in Moscow, and you'll be dead in a ditch." Adrian's expression went cold. He looked at Evelyn, something unspoken passing between them. Then he turned back to Fedorov. "Here's what's going to happen," Adrian said quietly. "You're going to tell me where the locket is. And in exchange, I'll let you live long enough to see your empire burn." Fedorov spat blood onto the seat. "You have no leverage, Volkov. Nothing I care about." "I wouldn't be so sure." Adrian pulled out his phone again and held up a photograph. Evelyn caught a glimpse of it, a young woman, maybe 20, with Fedorov's eyes and a bright smile. Fedorov's face went white. "You wouldn't." "Try me." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of gunfire and screeching tires. Then Fedorov's shoulders sagged. "The vault. In my estate. Third sublevel. Combination is—" The rear windshield exploded. Glass rained down and the driver jerked the wheel hard to the right. The car fishtailed, tires losing traction, and then they were airborne. Evelyn's scream cut off as they hit the ground, the impact slamming her head against the dashboard. Pain exploded through her skull, bright and sharp, and for a moment everything went dark. When her vision cleared, they were upside down. The car had rolled, landing in a ditch off the side of the road. She tasted blood, felt it running down her face from a cut above her eye. "Adrian, I'm here." His voice came from somewhere behind her, strained but alive. "Can you move?" Evelyn tried. Her seatbelt had her pinned, but she managed to twist enough to see him. He was still in the back seat, Fedorov unconscious beside him, and blood soaked his white shirt. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I've been worse." Adrian kicked out the remaining window and dragged himself through. "Come on, we need to move before they—" Headlights illuminated the wreckage. The SUVs had stopped on the road above them, and doors were opening, men climbing out with weapons raised. Adrian grabbed Evelyn's door and wrenched it open, metal screaming. He cut her seatbelt with a knife she hadn't known he was carrying and pulled her out just as the first shots rang out. They ran, into the trees, into the darkness, bullets tearing through branches above their heads. Evelyn's heels were gone, lost somewhere in the crash, and rocks cut into her bare feet. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Adrian's hand was an anchor, pulling her forward, and she clung to it like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. Behind them, men shouted in Russian, flashlights cutting through the forest. They were being hunted. "There," Adrian gasped, pointing ahead. Evelyn saw it, a bridge spanning a river, old and concrete, with lights in the distance. Victor's extraction point. They broke through the tree line just as 3 black vans screeched to a halt on the bridge. Men poured out, weapons drawn, and for a split second, Evelyn thought they were surrounded. Then Victor's voice cut through the chaos. "Get in!" Adrian shoved Evelyn toward the nearest van. She climbed in, her hands shaking, and Adrian followed. The door slammed shut, and the van was moving before Evelyn could catch her breath. Gunfire erupted behind them, but Victor's men returned fire, and within seconds they were speeding away from the bridge, away from Fedorov's estate, away from the nightmare. Evelyn sat in the dark interior of the van, her body shaking, blood drying on her face. Adrian was beside her, his breathing labored, and when she looked at him, she saw the extent of the damage, cuts, bruises, blood seeping through his shirt from a wound she couldn't see. "You're hurt," she said again, her voice breaking. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're—" "Evelyn." He grabbed her hand, his grip weak but steady. "I'm fine. We're alive. That's what matters." She wanted to argue, wanted to scream at him for dragging her into this, for getting them both nearly killed, for being so reckless with his own life. Instead, she squeezed his hand and didn't let go. Victor turned from the front seat, his expression grim. "Fedorov?" "Still in the car," Adrian said. "Unconscious, but alive." "And the locket?" "He told me where it is. We'll need a team to retrieve it." Adrian's eyes met Victor's. "And we'll need to move fast. He said it's being transferred to Moscow tomorrow." Victor swore in Russian. "This just keeps getting better." "It always does." Adrian leaned his head back against the seat, his eyes closing. "But we're not done yet." Evelyn looked at him, at this man who'd lied to her, protected her, dragged her into a war she didn't understand. And despite everything, despite the fear and the pain and the blood, she felt something shift inside her. She'd walked into Fedorov's estate tonight convinced she was doing it for revenge, for Thomas, for her mother. But sitting here, holding Adrian's hand in the darkness, she realized it was more complicated than that. She was doing it for herself. For the girl who'd spent 3 years being invisible. For the woman she was becoming. And she wasn't done yet either. The safe house Victor brought them to smelled like antiseptic and old cigarettes. It was smaller than Adrian's apartment, buried in an industrial district where nobody asked questions and nobody looked twice at blood-stained clothes. Evelyn sat on a metal folding chair while a medic, a woman who introduced herself only as Sonia, cleaned the cut above her eye. The sting of alcohol made her flinch, but she didn't make a sound. She'd already done enough screaming for one night. Across the room, Adrian was arguing with Victor in rapid Russian. His shirt was off, revealing a gunshot wound that had torn through his left shoulder. Sonia had patched it temporarily, but Adrian kept pulling away from her attempts to do more, too focused on whatever heated conversation he was having with Victor. "He needs to stay still," Sonia muttered in accented English, pressing a butterfly bandage to Evelyn's forehead. "But he never listens." "Does he ever?" Evelyn's voice came out hoarse. Sonia's mouth quirked. "Not in the 15 years I've known him." She stepped back, examining her work. "You'll have a scar, small one, but it'll fade." "Good. I'd hate to have survived tonight just to look like I lost a bar fight." "You look like you survived." Sonia packed up her supplies. "That's better than the alternative." When she moved to the other side of the room, Evelyn finally let herself breathe. Her hands were still shaking. She clasped them together, willing them to stop. But they wouldn't. The adrenaline had worn off somewhere during the drive, leaving behind exhaustion and a bone-deep tremor she couldn't control. Adrian's voice rose, sharp and angry. Victor said something back, equally heated, and then Adrian slammed his fist against the wall hard enough that the sound echoed through the room. Everyone went silent. Adrian stood there, breathing hard, his forehead pressed against the concrete. Then he turned, spotted Evelyn watching him, and something in his expression cracked. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her chair. "Let me see," he said quietly. Evelyn blinked. "See what?" "Your feet. You were running barefoot through the forest." She'd almost forgotten. The pain had become background noise, just another injury in a night full of them. But when she looked down, she saw the cuts, the dirt, the blood. Adrian's hands were gentle as he examined the damage, his touch so different from the violence she'd seen him capable of. He pulled antiseptic and gauze from Sonia's abandoned medical kit and started cleaning the wounds without asking permission. "You don't have to," Evelyn started. "I do." His voice was rough. "This is my fault." "That's not true. You wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for me. You wouldn't have been running, wouldn't have been bleeding." His hand stilled on her ankle. "I should never have brought you." Evelyn reached down and tilted his chin up, forcing him to look at her. "I made a choice. You didn't drag me into that car. You didn't force me to walk into Fedorov's estate. I chose this. Why?" The question came out broken. "Why would you choose this?" "Because I'm tired of being a victim." The words spilled out before she could stop them. "I'm tired of being the girl things happen to. The girl who gets saved, the girl who waits for other people to make decisions about her life." She took a shaky breath. "Tonight, I wasn't that girl. I was someone who fought back. And yeah, it was terrifying. And yeah, I almost died. But I'd rather almost die on my own terms than live safely in a cage." Adrian stared at her, something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. Then he went back to bandaging her feet, his movements careful, methodical. "Your mother would have said the same thing," he said quietly. "You really knew her?" "Not well, but well enough." Adrian wrapped gauze around her right foot. "She had this way of looking at people, like she could see straight through whatever mask they were wearing. Made you feel exposed, but also seen." Evelyn's throat tightened. "I don't remember her like that. I just remember her being sick. She was good at hiding things, had to be, in her line of work." Adrian finished with the bandages and sat back on his heels. "But the night she saved me, she wasn't hiding anything. She looked me in the eye and said, 'You don't have to be what they made you.' And I didn't understand what she meant until years later." "What did she mean?" "That we're more than the sum of our traumas." Adrian's smile was bitter. "That the things that break us don't have to define us. We get to choose who we become." Evelyn studied his face, the scars, the exhaustion, the weight he carried in every line of his body. "Do you believe that?" I'm trying to. Victor cleared his throat from across the room. When you two are done having a moment, we have a problem. Adrian stood, his jaw tightening. What kind of problem? The device your girl planted? It's sending data, but not from Fedorov's estate. It's moving. Victor pulled up a laptop, showing a map with a blinking red dot. Whoever she stuck it on is heading toward the airport. Evelyn's stomach dropped. The server. The woman she'd planted the device on was leaving. Can we track her? Adrian asked. We are tracking her, but if she gets on a plane, we lose our only access to Fedorov's security system. Adrian swore. How long do we have? Her flight leaves in 90 minutes. Adrian turned to Evelyn. Did you get a good look at her? Could you identify her? Maybe. She was young, dark hair, wearing a server's uniform, but there were dozens of servers there. That's not enough. Victor shook his head. Airport security will never let us get close enough to search people. Then we don't search. Adrian's expression hardened. We intercept. You can't be serious. You're in no condition to... I didn't ask your opinion. Adrian grabbed a clean shirt from a pile of supplies and pulled it on, his movement stiff from the shoulder wound. Get me a car and 2 men. We're going to the airport. Adrian... Evelyn stood, ignoring the pain in her feet. You're hurt. You can barely move your left arm. I've worked with worse. That doesn't make it smart. Smart went out the window when I kidnapped Konstantin Fedorov at gunpoint. Adrian's smile was sharp, dangerous. We're way past smart now. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to force him to see reason, but she recognized the look in his eyes, the same look she'd seen in the mirror tonight when she'd decided to walk into Fedorov's estate. The look of someone who'd stopped calculating odds and started operating on pure will. Then I'm coming with you, she said. Absolutely not. You need someone who can identify her, and I'm the only one who's seen her face. Evelyn crossed her arms. So either you take me, or you're going in blind. Adrian's jaw worked. He looked at Victor, who shrugged. She's got a point, Victor said. I hate both of you. But Adrian nodded. Fine, but you stay in the car. No exceptions. Whatever you say. They both knew she was lying. The airport was chaos at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. Travelers rushed through terminals, dragging suitcases and screaming children, and security moved through the crowds with bored efficiency. Evelyn and Adrian walked through it all like they belonged, just another couple catching a late flight. Adrian had changed into dark jeans and a leather jacket that hid the gun at his waist. Evelyn wore borrowed clothes, plain black pants, and a sweater that was too big for her, and kept her bandaged feet hidden in boots that were a size too large. There, Victor's voice crackled through the earpiece Adrian had given her. International Terminal, Gate 47. She's in the security line. Evelyn scanned the crowd and spotted her. Same dark hair, same young face, now wearing civilian clothes and pulling a small rolling suitcase. She looked nervous, checking her phone every few seconds. That's her, Evelyn confirmed. Good. Now we wait for her to clear security, then... No time. Adrian's hand closed around Evelyn's wrist. She just got a text. Look at her face. The woman had gone pale. She abandoned the security line, moving quickly toward the exit, her suitcase forgotten. She knows, Adrian said. Someone tipped her off. They followed, keeping enough distance not to spook her, but close enough to track her movements. The woman pushed through the crowds, heading for the parking garage, and Evelyn felt her pulse spike. Adrian, what if she has backup? Then this gets messy. They entered the parking garage just as the woman reached a gray sedan. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking, and Adrian moved. He was fast, faster than someone with a gunshot wound should be, crossing the distance before the woman could react. He had her pressed against the car, one hand over her mouth, the other showing her the gun. Don't scream, don't fight, just breathe. His voice was calm, almost gentle. We're not going to hurt you. We just need something you have. The woman's eyes were wide with terror. She nodded frantically. Adrian removed his hand from her mouth. You were working at Konstantin Fedorov's estate tonight. A woman planted something on you. In your pocket. Do you still have it? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Adrian's voice hardened. I can see it in your eyes. You found it, didn't you? That's why you're running. The woman's face crumpled. She started crying, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Please, I didn't know what it was. I was just going to throw it away, I swear. Where is it? In my bag, the black one, in the trunk. Adrian nodded to Evelyn. She moved to the trunk and the woman hit a button on her keys, popping it open. Inside was a black messenger bag. Evelyn unzipped it and found the device, still blinking its faint red light. Got it, she said. Adrian released the woman, stepping back. You have two choices. You can run, get on a plane, disappear, or you can go back to Fedorov and tell him what happened here. What do you want me to do? The woman whispered. I want you to choose the first option, because if you choose the second, you won't live long enough to regret it. Adrian's expression was cold. Fedorov doesn't tolerate failure. And letting us get this device back? That's a failure. The woman nodded, her whole body shaking. I won't tell him, I swear. Good. Adrian pulled out a thick envelope from his jacket and handed it to her. There's $10,000 in there. Get on a plane. Don't come back. The woman stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Then she grabbed it, got in her car, and drove away so fast her tires squealed. Evelyn watched her go, then turned to Adrian. Why did you give her money? But because she's a kid who got caught up in something she doesn't understand, and because I'm not a monster. Adrian pocketed the device. Let's go. We have a vault to crack. They rendezvoused with Victor at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was cold, industrial, filled with equipment Evelyn didn't recognize. Victor had assembled a team, 8 men, all armed, all moving with the kind of efficiency that came from years of doing illegal things together. Fedorov's estate is on high alert, Victor said, pulling up blueprints on a screen. After what happened tonight, he's locked it down. Guards on every entrance, patrols every 10 minutes, and the vault itself is 3 levels underground with biometric locks. Can we bypass them? Adrian asked. Maybe. If we had Fedorov's fingerprints and retinal scan. Victor's expression was grim. Which we don't. Actually, Evelyn stepped forward. We might. Everyone turned to look at her. When Adrian dragged Fedorov out of the estate, there was blood. On Adrian's jacket. If Fedorov touched it, we might be able to lift prints. Victor's eyes lit up. And if we had a clear photo of his eyes? I took one. Evelyn pulled out the phone Adrian had given her. During the chaos at Fedorov's party, she'd snapped a photo of him, pretending to take a selfie. The image was blurry, but Fedorov's face was visible. Will this work? Victor took the phone, examined the photo, and started laughing. You're full of surprises, girl. I'm a quick learner. It took them 4 hours to prepare. Victor's tech specialist extracted usable fingerprints from Adrian's jacket and created a synthetic replica. Another specialist used Evelyn's photo to generate a fake retinal scan. It was rushed, imperfect, and had maybe a 30% chance of working. But it was all they had. They hit Fedorov's estate at 3 in the morning, when exhaustion made guards sloppy and darkness provided cover. Adrian led the team, moving through the grounds like a ghost, and Evelyn stayed close, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. The security was exactly as tight as Victor had predicted, but Adrian had spent years learning how to move through places he wasn't supposed to be, and he guided them past cameras, around patrols, through blind spots that shouldn't have existed. They reached the vault entrance, a steel door hidden behind a wine rack in the estate's cellar. Victor worked on the biometric scanner while Adrian kept watch, his gun drawn, his body tense. This is taking too long, one of Victor's men muttered. Patience, Victor said, not looking up. The scanner beeped, once, twice. Then it turned green, and the door hissed open. They descended into the vault, a concrete bunker lined with safety deposit boxes, filing cabinets, and shelves stacked with items Fedorov had deemed valuable enough to lock away. Victor's men spread out, searching, while Adrian moved to the center of the room. There, he said, pointing. A small brass box sat on a pedestal, spotlit like a museum piece. Inside the box, nestled on velvet, was the locket. Evelyn's breath caught. It was smaller than she'd imagined, tarnished with age, but she recognized it instantly. Her mother's locket, the one she'd worn every day until the cancer made her too weak to remember putting on jewelry. Adrian picked it up carefully, turning it over in his hands. It's lighter than I expected. It's not the locket that matters, Evelyn said quietly. It's what it opens. Adrian examined it closer and found a tiny inscription on the back, so small it was almost invisible. Coordinates. Victor, Adrian called. I need a map. Victor pulled up a digital map on his tablet, and Adrian read off the coordinates. The location populated on screen, a bank in Zurich, Switzerland. Of course, Victor muttered. Swiss bank. Impossible to access without the physical key. Then we go to Zurich. Adrian pocketed the locket. Or, Evelyn stepped forward, an idea forming. Or we leak the coordinates. Both men stared at her. If the Covenant finds out where the evidence is hidden, they'll panic, Evelyn continued, her voice gaining strength. They'll scramble to get to it first. And while they're fighting each other, we contact the right authorities, people who aren't compromised, and hand over everything. Adrian's expression shifted, something like admiration flickering across his face. You want to start a war. I want to end one. Evelyn met his eyes. My mother died protecting this information. Thomas died protecting me. I'm not letting their deaths mean nothing. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. It could work, if we move fast. Then let's move. Adrian turned to his men. Pack everything in this vault. Documents, hard drives, anything that looks important. We burn this place to the ground. They worked quickly, efficiently, loading bags with evidence that would destroy powerful people. And when they were done, Victor set charges that would reduce the vault to rubble. They were halfway back to the surface when the alarm went off. Move! Adrian shouted. They ran. Through corridors, upstairs, past guards who were just waking up to the threat. Gunfire erupted, bullets tearing through walls, and one of Victor's men went down. Adrian returned fire, covering their escape, and Evelyn felt something shift inside her. This was it. The moment everything could fall apart. The moment they could all die. But she wasn't afraid anymore. They burst out of the estate just as the charges detonated. The explosion shook the ground, fire blooming into the night sky, and they piled into waiting vans as guards swarmed from every direction. Victor's driver floored it, tires screaming, and they were gone. 3 days later, the story broke. It started with a leak to a journalist in London, one with a reputation for exposing corruption and a track record of staying alive long enough to publish. The journalist received an anonymous package containing coordinates, context, and enough preliminary evidence to make the story impossible to ignore. Within hours, it was international news. Within a day, people were resigning from powerful positions. Within a week, arrests were being made. The Covenant didn't crumble overnight. Institutions that entrenched don't die easily, but cracks appeared. Pressure mounted. And slowly, painfully, the network Evelyn's mother had spent years documenting began to collapse under its own weight. Evelyn watched it happen from Adrian's apartment, the city sprawling below them, and felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. They're calling your mother a hero, Adrian said, joining her at the window. He'd been in surgery 2 days ago to properly repair his shoulder, and his arm was in a sling. There's talk of naming a memorial after her. She would have hated that. Evelyn's smile was sad. She never wanted recognition. She just wanted to do the right thing. She did, and so did you. Evelyn turned to look at him. What happens now? Now, Adrian's expression was unreadable. Now you have a choice. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a passport, her passport, along with a bank card and a set of keys. There's money in the account, Adrian said quietly. Enough to start over anywhere you want. The keys are to an apartment in Barcelona. Quiet neighborhood. No one will look for you there. Evelyn stared at the envelope, her heart in her throat. You're letting me go. I'm giving you the choice I should have given you 3 years ago. Adrian's voice was rough. You never asked to be part of my world. Never signed up for any of this. So now you get to decide. Stay or walk away and build a life that doesn't involve looking over your shoulder. Evelyn looked at the envelope in her hands. Freedom, safety, a chance at the normal life she'd once thought she wanted. Then she looked at Adrian, at the man who'd lied to her, protected her, dragged her into hell, and fought beside her to claw their way back out. The man who'd kept a promise to a dead brother, who'd honored a debt to a dead mother, who carried guilt like it was oxygen. The man who'd given her a choice. What do you want? She asked quietly. This isn't about what I want. Yes, it is. Evelyn stepped closer. Because if I walk out that door, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if I left because I wanted to or because I felt like I had to. So I'm asking, what do you want? Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I I want you to stay. Why? Because... He stopped, struggling with words. Because you see me. Not the things I've done. Not the reputation. Just me. And I don't want to lose that. Evelyn felt tears burn behind her eyes. You're not losing anything. She set the envelope on the table, walked to the front door, and Adrian's expression shuddered. But instead of opening it, she locked it. Then she turned back to face him. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Not to Barcelona. Not to some quiet life where I pretend the last week didn't happen. I'm staying right here. Adrian stared at her. You understand what that means. What my life is. It's dangerous. It's violent. It's... I know what it is. Evelyn crossed the distance between them. I've seen it. I've lived it. And I'm choosing it anyway. Why? Because I'm tired of being safe. She reached up, her hand resting against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Because for the first time in my life, I feel alive. And because when I look at you, I don't see a monster. I see someone who's trying to do better, and I want to be part of that. Adrian's hand came up to cover hers, his touch gentle. This won't be easy. Nothing worth having is. I can't promise you happy endings. I don't want promises. Evelyn's voice was steady. I want truth. I want partnership. I want to build something real with someone who sees me as an equal. You are my equal. Adrian's voice cracked. You've been braver than I ever was. Then stop trying to protect me from your world and let me stand beside you in it. Adrian pulled her close, his good arm wrapping around her, and Evelyn felt something in her chest unlock. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever in the way stories promised, but something deeper. Understanding, recognition. The knowledge that they'd both survived things that should have broken them, and they'd chosen to keep surviving together. I'm exactly where I belong, she whispered against his shoulder. And for the first time since Thomas died, since her mother died, since her life became a series of losses and lies, Evelyn meant it. She'd walked through fire, she'd faced monsters, she'd learned that safety was an illusion and that the only real choice anyone had was how they responded when everything fell apart. She'd chosen to stop being afraid, she'd chosen to fight, and now standing in Adrian's apartment with the city lights spread below them like fallen stars, she was choosing something else, to build a life on her own terms, with someone who understood that strength wasn't about never being broken, it was about deciding what to do with the pieces. The next morning, Evelyn woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. She found Adrian in the kitchen, working one-handed to pour 2 cups, his arm still in its sling. You should be resting, she said. I've rested enough. He handed her a cup. Besides, Victor called. There's a situation. What kind of situation? The kind that needs both of us. Evelyn took a sip of coffee, felt its warmth spread through her chest, and smiled. Then let's handle it. Because that was the thing about choice. Once you made it, you lived with it. You didn't look back. You didn't second guess. You walked forward into whatever came next, knowing you'd decided your own path. And Evelyn's path led here, to this man, this city, this dangerous, complicated, impossible life. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she'd put on that red dress 5 days ago. It was better, because it wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning.